You really want to know?
I do want to know, yeah.
I think if I was Charlotte, it would have taken all the energy I could muster up, not to have gone and knocked her right out of the ring through the rope into the first row, and then pulled all her hair out.
The main thing I really wanted to kind of talk about that we missed last week was the confrontation between Charlotte Flair and somebody Greg's very familiar with, and Tiffany Stratton. So plenty of news leaked out about this confrontation that happened, the promo exchange that they had, that they went off script greatly. The backstage wasn't very happy with the situation and what it ultimately came into, because Charlotte ended up dropping that Ludwig Kaiser and Tiffany were seeing each other, and it made reference to that, everything. So, Greg, did you get to check that clip out?
I checked it out. I
What
thought
did
it was a pretty good interview.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah, I don't get this go off script. I guess do they write all their interviews for these
Well, I
athletes?
think they have like a bullet point set of ideas that
Bullet points. Yeah,
hmm
I didn't see it really go off script. I thought it got pretty damn good at the end there.
It got pretty heated, right?
Yeah, it did. And I mean, when you talk from the heart, that's when the people can feel it, and that's when they buy tickets.
Yeah, it's
I
true.
mean, that's my outlook on it. We never had script. We had, we get a couple bullet points that we needed for the match coming up, and then fill in. But you have to let your own personality come out in the interview, and who you are and how you really feel about something, because that relates to the fans and it
Mhm.
relates to them, and they get emotionally involved. They're going to buy a ticket. So
Well,
I
I
didn't. I wasn't offended by it at all.
Mhm.
Were you, TA?
What did you think? Yeah, Magnum.
You really want to know?
I do
Yeah.
want to know. Yeah.
I think if I was Charlotte, it would have taken all the energy I could muster up, not to have gone and knocked her right out of the ring through the rope into the first row, and then pulled all her hair out. That's what I think. Yeah.
Well, you emotionally got involved in it.
No.
What were you mad about?
Here's the line: wives, family, kids are out of bounds,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and going down a road and calling somebody basically a loser because of a misfortune in life, which millions of people go through, and trying to bring that into a storyline that wasn't agreed upon on the front side, is the ultimate slap in the face and showing of just not being mature enough professionally to know how to navigate things like that, and stay between the ditches. It was totally unprofessional in my book. It's not anything goes. It's not the internet. It's not sitting there being a keyboard warrior. It sounded like a keyboard warrior signing off that all of a sudden had a platform and had a moment, and it was just it was a poor choice
Mhm.
in my opinion.
Well, Greg, yeah. How do you feel about that aspect? Because I guess the report is it started going off script or off the reservation, I guess, if you will, when Charlotte was making fun of the pitch of Tiffany's voice, and then Tiffany fired back and said what she had to say, referencing Charlotte's married life and situations
Yeah.
in the past and everything like that, and then she did that 0-3 thing, outside of the ring, and then left. And then that's when Charlotte made it a little Ludwig Kaiser was in my DMs, kind of saying that kind of thing. So, yeah, if it was to get personal without it being like really like them collaborating on it beforehand, somebody was
If they had collaborated, all bets were off. Get it
Mhm.
good, but it was obviously not collaborated. It wasn't just a good work. It was a ripple across the pond, and it's the example of somebody this now finds themselves in a main event capacity that doesn't have the years of experience of
Yeah.
having to do something impromptu. Because if your adversary does something and pushes your buttons, you got to know how far you can take it, and what you can do, and still be appropriate. And those lines are things, again, you can do all kinds of things to poke the bear and make fun, but you don't go into somebody's personal life.
Yeah, you're right. You don't. Yeah, I
Well,
agree with you there.
so here's a update, a little bit of an update. Fightful Select is reporting that a match was in the works even before Charlotte's return with Tiffany, obviously. And their WrestleMania match remains unchanged. And despite the unexpected exchange, there's no concern about it affecting the in-ring action. While WWE hasn't revealed the winner, sources say the creative direction is still intact, and talent usually doesn't learn much outcomes until the day of the event. This is written out by eWrestlingNews.com. It said that Charlotte Flair and Tiffany Stratton in match expected to take place on night 1 of WrestleMania 41. So, yeah, but just a lot of different feedback came from that. Charlotte has done a pretty good job at handling herself online. If anybody's seen that, she teased. She was like, "I wanted to address something." And she made it sound like she was going to talk about this situation, but ultimately just made fun of the fans in Chicago yet again. So I thought she's been rolling with the punches pretty well. But yeah, this was like, I'm all for like it kind of being like this. Me personally, how I felt about it, I thought it did not come across very well at all, like the whole situation. But I will say that as a fan or a viewer, like if I was looking at it from that perspective, I'd be like, well, this is heightens things up because there is bad blood between these two.
Made it real.
Made it real in that regard. So, who knows? It is a crazy situation though, and such a high profile match too for WrestleMania forthcoming.
Well, and she's young
I'm
yet.
going to flip it. Let me flip the script for you and give you a great comparison of doing something really personal and doing it well. So the Gunter Jey Uso program that's going on is obviously programmed, obviously thought out, and one of the most intense exchanges and series of events that they've had yet, coming up with this, with Jay and his brother, Jay, getting zip tied to the rope and, having to watch his brother just get the tar beat out of him and, color from, filled his boots and just beat to flipping death.
Yeah.
And then the promo that Jay came back with to the ring, which at first I didn't like it because I thought in my mind, I've watched my brother, get, have this done to him, and I'm going to even give someone the dignity to talk to them.
Right.
I don't know where, with nobody there to keep it from, going on. But what he delivered was so passionate and so good and so personal, and, talked about his mother, talked about Gunther and his mother, and, and just things that, obviously everybody was on the same page, made it very personal, made it very, points that were like, made your skin crawl thinking about being Gunther, and the fact that, Jay said, I was scared of you, but I'm not scared of you no more, and it just, there was a switch turned in that was the polar opposite of the thing that got out of control with Tiffany and Charlotte. So you have two things both marching up to, world title, events, one that goes off script and gets really heated and catty and exchanged and things that, really wish you could rewind. And then you look at the counterpart of that of something very, very, very well done that really took that to a whole nother level. I mean, that contest is going to be, we knew the match is going to be great. No question. I mean, Gunther is the ring general, but they led into that the way you tell the story and the way you really pull people in with all the right things, rather than, a catty sounding little, like two girls in a schoolyard, going at it. That was just, it didn't do anybody any favors in that whole thing. for either one of them.
No,
I mean, I
agree with you.
I'm not saying either one was right, but when it went bad, it started going bad, 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 bad. And the counterpoint of that is this is how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah. No, it was very good. Very well done. I mean, they spoke from the heart, both of them, and you really felt the emotions, and they did a heck of a job. I
I
agree with you.
loved that
That was
couple.
a very serious, honest interview from both of them.
I loved
And
the couple weeks
sellers.
ago. Yeah, when Gunther just attacking Jimmy and just having his blood all over him and everything like that. What a visual that is! Where it's just like Gunther's like has this Luthez, Vern Gagne almost kind of vibe to himself, where it's just like this is like a champion, your old school kind of champion going on. And here's just him, this bloody mess. It's not his own blood; it's somebody else's blood, and it's just like a very almost like horror film house in a certain way. And so I thought that was a good setup with that.
That was a great presentation. Yeah, much better than the girls. Girls are girls; they get catty. So I mean, it kind of fit their personalities. And with Tiffany, she's still young. She's only been in there a couple of years. So she doesn't know how to react to it as a professional. And it was the same thing. I had issues with her. I've told you in the gym, working out with her, and I just told her to get the hell out and go home. You're done.
Yeah.
I didn't want to listen to that crap. But the younger generation have a different flow of vocabulary, I guess, and how they approach things. And she needs help with that. She needs some direction.
Just experience. It's just
Yeah,
experience.
that's what it is.
I mean, it's no, nobody, and unfortunately, that is the thing that disarms them. They don't have the years of experience where you're flying by the seat of your pants and you're playing off each other and you're doing all that improvisationally. So when they're trying to memorize words, bullet points, make it their own, something goes out of whack, and you don't have 5, 10, 15 years of poise and grace from standing out there, being in that center limelight. A Seth Rollins could pull that off without even blinking an eye. CM Punk could do the same thing. I mean, people that have been around, Randy Orton, you wouldn't ruffle their feathers. But someone that's been out there a short time and doing all they can to try to remember all the point A to point B places they're supposed to get, and then something goes awry. Then that's where that lack of training and just sheer time on the mic and getting in that comfortable place in your own skin, allows you to handle those things with grace.
TA, did you, when I started, and I'd lay in bed at night and I would try to do an interview about different opponents in my mind and go over it, what I'd say, how to approach it. And as a babyface, I could do a pretty good interview, sincere, emotional, get people involved in it. But I really worked hard on that, on all the different opponents. Like I said, I'd lay in bed at night and think about them. And did you do that too?
I got 100 things I can say right now that would be totally inappropriate.
What you were doing in bed?
I never one time laid in bed at night and thought about what I was going to say the next day.
Well, what were you laying in bed doing
one
then?
Time.
He was busy doing something else, I think.
Yeah.
No, I was just resting because I had a long day.
Okay.
No, I mean, I could do that beforehand, but I wasn't one of those people that could do that far. I was very in the moment. Like I could go do something, and this was what always worried me about the acting thing and the Hollywood thing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I could do something completely off the cuff with, committed to it, believing everything I said, do it all, and blow it out there. But if someone asked me to go like rewind it and go redo it, I couldn't do that because it was just I committed. I went. It's like jumping out of an airplane or something, and I was in it. Full bore committed to what I was saying and doing, but it wasn't one of those things that I could just, oh, well, let's pick up at line, blah, 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 and redo that. No, I'm not like that.
No, I couldn't do that either. I was like that. Just let it flow. Let it
Well,
flow.
here's a good follow-up question when it comes to all this stuff too. So when Charlotte kind of got threw off her game, I think, by the crowd reaction, what they were doing. Like, she was getting booed like crazy out there. And I think, Charlotte came in there with the intention of making her return. I'm sure she went through so much, like personally and professionally, when it comes to like, hey, I got injured. I'm trying to get back on track. I'm sure she was really happy to get back into it. And like, maybe was going to be appreciative of the fans. I think that was the game plan, but fans will react how they react, and they have been booing Charlotte like crazy. So I think during that promo, all those boos kind of threw off her game a little bit. Andrew Hermes, who's our research guy for Arn Anderson, he chimes in with this. He's like, what about Charlotte's inability as a tenured professional and high-level star to not be able to handle the crowd? I think personally, like when I watch her, I think for the most part, she does a pretty good job at handling the crowd. I think this was an instance where she did get thrown off, though. But
Yeah.
I guess what I want to ask from you guys is like, what do you think of Charlotte as a promo? And in turn, have you ever been thrown off from a crowd when you were in your ring doing the wrestling stuff? Magnum, let's start with you on that one, I guess.
Yeah, and see, in the 80s, in my era, I mean, crowds were very electric and were very much engaged when you were in the matches, and they of course cheered and not when he came out, but during promos, it was before that, that interaction thing where, Stone Cold got that whole deal started. The fans, basically being part of the promo and having.
Yeah.
So, didn't have that kind of thing to try to navigate. But it's funny because I see it in with things Charlotte's had to deal with, stuff that Tessa's dealing with in TNA.
Sure, yeah.
Was talking. We were having a little chat thing going on. Like JBL was talking about a point in time in his career where something had gone on, and the fans were like on another page and wanting to, not really be zeroed in on what he's talking about, rather than what was going on in the gossip mill or whatever, and how you just you can't let them control and dictate where you're going. Mm-hmm. and even when Punk and Cody and John Cena and all these guys are coming out, the people want to get so involved now. For any of them to get their message across with timing, they've got to, you can't completely placate to it, but you can't ignore it, because right. It is now part of the environment, it's part of the culture, part of the thing going on. Mm-hmm. And if you can't pivot a little bit and whatever and lean into it and still command the room, because it's more difficult to command the room when you're dealing with 8, 10, 20,000 people being very, very, very loud, than it's probably ever been in the history of the sport. For whether you're being cheered or booed or either one, it can still be very much throw you off your game and telling your story, what it is you're trying to portray. And I've seen it throw several people off. Even go back to the Netflix, the Netflix debut, and the people coming out, and everybody's all excited and everything, and the flowers and all that's all great. But at the end of the day, you still got a certain amount of time to get your stuff in, do your thing, and communicate effectively. And the people in wanting to be part of the deal can kind of overshadow that sometimes.
Absolutely.
I think Charlotte does a good job.
I do too. Overall, I do too.
Mm-hmm. It's hard when those people start chanting. You can see it once in a while. The guys get a little flustered in there, and you can tell they're starting to lose their train of thought. Mm-hmm. And it's tough. It's a different environment. We used to stand out there and do it in front of a few people in the audience, and they listen to the interview, and here they're part of the interview.
Exactly, Greg. Yeah.
And that's hard and difficult to work through, especially when you're concentrating on what you want to get out and what you want to say about your opponent and what you want to do.
Right.
Throws you off a little bit.
Absolutely, it does. And I think Charlotte was trying to maintain, the direction they were supposed to probably be going in, but at the same time, I think she was throwing off her game a little bit and had to come up with some sort of retort. So
I don't think she was, I don't think it's the reaction that she thought she would get.
Yeah.
When she got it, it kind of got her wound up and thrown off a little bit.
Well, I guess to close,
especially when she's been away for a while.
Yeah.
If you're doing it, every week, it's a little different than, you're gone for a year and now you to come back in and do a interview like that with that big of a match, and the people are chanting and yelling in your ear.
Yeah.
Tough to stay focused.
I guess to close this topic out though, too, how would you correct course on this? What would you guys do? I mean, we're probably going to get an answer tonight when most people have already seen this. But when it comes to maybe what they decide to do. But ultimately, if you're setting this up for WrestleMania, Magnum, how would you follow up after what happened from last week with Tiffany and Charlotte? Is there a certain way that you would think of?
I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, because putting them both out there again, it's obvious that Trish isn't quite ready for that level of engagement, like with that level of intensity, because when she gets nervous, she gets very pitchy, and her voice seems to get higher and higher, and it sounds like you're talking to a very young girl rather than a woman that's supposed to be the world's heavyweight champion. From a performance perspective, I mean, she's right there where she needs to be. She's gonna be a multi-time world champion, and stays healthy, is going to have a very long career. But finding your presentation to go along with that performance, is more to it than just a few catchphrases. I mean, and girls have done it well. Alexa Bliss.
Yeah.
Alexa Bliss could just captivate a room, an audience. Because sometimes when it's off the rails and you can't talk, you can control the crowd with your look, with your reaction, the way you register, finding humor in what they're doing rather than them seeing that they're rattling your cage.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I've tried to share with Tessa. I mean, you gotta get comfortable enough in your own skin to just take that energy and use it just like you would a cheer. If you're creating emotion, you're moving the needle. You're doing something. And then using that energy to get where you want to go is the master class. I promise you, were Dusty or Rick, in the same circumstance, they'd have a field day with in their prime with an audience doing like that. Or go back to Kurt Angle with when he was a babyface and they're chanting "You suck," what he turned into is like alma mater, and
right.
And turned it all around. Yeah. So there's just you got to be sharper and smarter than the people that you're playing to.
Greg, do you have any thoughts too on?
Well, I was about Tessa. Yesterday, I'm dinging around on Instagram, and she came up on Instagram, and I listened to her interview. She did a heck of an interview.
She's great.
She's great. She can go on a talk show or do any of those kind of things as professional and represent your company as anybody in the world.
Who worked with her? Who worked with her on her interviews?
Nobody.
No.
I thought
you were going to take credit for that. That's why I threw it out there for you.
He wanted to give you the layup. Watch the alley-oop.
I'm taking no credit in any of that. She was in theater from the time she was in junior high school and loved that craft, passionate about that, and was always a great great on camera. The cameras always liked her.
Yeah.
People probably don't remember back, but I mean, she did little vignettes and stuff for WWE with when NXT was first getting
The Mae
its
Young
way.
thing when they did the Mae Young.
Remember, they did there was some bar room scene when she was sitting there when Sheamus came in, and there was some big deal. And then I can't remember the guy that they used to come down and had all the pop culture. The guy that had the lollipop.
Adam Rose.
Yeah, Adam Rose.
Adam Rose.
She was in that little eclectic group of misfits who would come down to the ring. She
the Rosebuds.
Yeah, the Rosebuds.
Yep.
Yeah, she got to kind of dibble and dabble with all that kind of little stuff and have fun in the beginning, just like Charlotte and Alexa. Remember them being the backup girls for Triple H at the WrestleMania, where they were the harem girls.
Yeah.
The outfits before anybody knew who they were. Yeah.
How about that? Here's something that Eddie Prather threw out there too, and I'll get your guys' perspective. Tiffany and Charlotte are too similar. Do you agree with that notion? Are they too similar? Is that why they're not kind of lining up as well? Maybe.
Well, I can tell you, speaking for Tiffany, she's young, and I've told you I had trouble with her in camp,
right,
2 or 3 times, and told her to get out and go home. You're done. I'm not going to work with you. You're not going to listen. She had an attitude, and she'll always have that attitude. Maybe it'll get straightened out more because she's now in with the big guy, the big people.
Right.
And she better figure it out, or she won't last long. But I think she's starting to figure it out. But what I've said about her in the past is what you see is what you get. I mean, her personality is her personality.
Yeah.
And